At dawn, Liverpool's docks disappear into heavy fog, hiding a city that appears calm before any sign of collapse. The river lies still, the air cold, and the harbor feels suspended in silence. Wooden ships rest quietly in the mist, their tall masts rising above dark water like fixed shadows. Nothing yet suggests the burden these vessels carry across the Irish Sea. As the ships draw closer, their worn hulls emerge through the fog, marked by long crossings and harsh conditions. Each one carries people who have already lost their homes, their food, and their certainty of survival. Crowded decks line the docks, filled with adult men and women standing close together, conserving what little strength remains. Many are already exhausted before stepping onto land. Beyond the harbor, Liverpool's skyline slowly comes into view. Brick warehouses and church spires signal wealth, order, and imperial confidence. Along the streets near the docks, carts continue to roll across stone roads as trade carries on without interruption. Merchants move with purpose, largely unaware of the crisis arriving beside them. Tall warehouses glow faintly beneath oil lamps, symbols of prosperity built on distant labor and global trade. Warm light spills from their windows, sharply contrasting with the cold fog outside. Inside, crates are stacked high and ledgers carefully maintained. Coins are counted methodically, profits secured, while more ships arrive at the docks below. Through open windows, the harbor remains visible, reminding us how closely wealth and desperation now exist side by side. Liverpool appears strong, yet pressure quietly gathers beneath its surface. Out at sea, additional ships approach under heavy skies, moving slowly toward the port. Each arrival brings more people fleeing hunger and collapse. On deck, passengers sit tightly packed, bodies weakened by long journeys and poor conditions. Their faces show fatigue rather than relief. Clothing hangs loose on thin frames, and bare feet rest on wet wooden planks. For many, this crossing has already taken everything they had left. As arrivals step onto Liverpool's stone docks, their weakness stands in stark contrast to the city's busy pathways. The flow of people increases with every ship that unloads. Nearby streets begin to fill as newcomers rest against walls, searching for shelter wherever space allows. The city's surface starts to strain. Narrow alleys near the port grow crowded, offering little relief or protection. Space becomes scarce almost immediately. Then, beneath one building, a dark cellar entrance appears. Stone steps lead downward, away from light and air. The descent begins as daylight fades quickly, replaced by damp air rising from below the streets. Each step moves further from the surface. Inside the cellar, low ceilings and stone walls close in tightly. What was never meant for living becomes a place of containment. Moisture seeps through brickwork, and silence fills the confined space. Here, Liverpool's hidden tragedy quietly begins. As the number of arrivals continues to rise, Liverpool begins to lose control of its space. Lodging houses fill quickly, and every available room is claimed. Streets near the docks grow crowded with adult men and women who have nowhere else to go. Temporary shelter becomes scarce almost overnight. Officials speak of the situation as temporary, yet no clear solution appears. The city searches for room, but finds none. With the surface already strained, Liverpool turns inward. Not outward, but downward. Beneath shops and homes, underground cellars begin to fill. These spaces were built to store goods, not to hold human lives. Stone steps lead below street level, away from daylight and fresh air. What waits beneath is unseen by those passing overhead. Inside the cellars, there are no windows. No proper ventilation. Only narrow openings that allow very little light to enter. The ceilings hang low, forcing adult men and women to sit or crouch for hours at a time. Standing upright becomes impossible. Stone walls press inward, damp and cold to the touch. Moisture seeps steadily through brickwork. Water from the streets above slowly filters downward. The floor becomes uneven, darkened by dampness. Air inside the cellar feels heavy and unmoving. Breathing grows shallow without anyone speaking of it aloud. Here, time loses meaning. Without sunlight, day and night can no longer be distinguished. The only signs of passing hours come from changes in temperature and the distant sound of footsteps overhead. As more people are forced inside, space disappears rapidly. Adult men and women sit shoulder to shoulder along the walls. Personal belongings are pushed aside or lost entirely. Privacy ceases to exist. The cellars do not fill with noise, but with silence. A silence broken only by quiet movement and restrained breathing. Gradually, those inside begin to understand the truth. They are no longer waiting for help. They are being placed somewhere out of sight. Medical observers later described these conditions in plain terms. Human beings living below ground, as if already buried. This is no longer housing. It is containment. Each day, the cellars grow more crowded. Every corner is claimed. Those arriving later find no place left to sit. They stand, crouch, or lie wherever the floor allows. Above ground, Liverpool continues its routines. Trade moves forward. Streets remain active. But beneath the city, another Liverpool is forming. A hidden city, unseen and unacknowledged. A place where people vanish from public view. Without ever leaving the city itself. They begin to call it the black hole. Not simply because it is dark, but because anyone pushed inside seems to disappear. And as the cellars continue to fill, pressure builds quietly, waiting for what comes next. As spring turns into summer, conditions inside the cellars begin to change. The warmth does not bring relief. It brings pressure. Air inside these underground spaces grows heavier with each passing day. Movement becomes slower, more deliberate. Adult men and women sit closer together than before, bodies pressed tightly as more are forced inside. There is no space left to withdraw. The cellar feels increasingly confined. Walls that once felt distant now seem close. Heat settles into the stone and refuses to leave. The air stops circulating. Moisture on the walls thickens, darkening the brickwork. Condensation forms where breath meets cold stone. The floor grows slick beneath worn shoes and bare feet. Every surface feels damp to the touch. People breathe shallowly, conserving energy without speaking of it. Each breath feels heavier than the last. As the space fills, even small movements become difficult. Turning, standing, or stretching requires effort. Groups sit huddled together, heads lowered, avoiding unnecessary motion. Silence becomes a form of endurance. Time loses all structure. Without light or fresh air, hours blend together without distinction. Some attempt to rest while seated. Others remain awake, listening to breathing around them. The cellar grows warmer as bodies generate heat with nowhere for it to escape. The air thickens further. Faces glisten with sweat in the dim darkness. Clothing clings uncomfortably to the skin. Fatigue spreads quietly through the room. Strength fades without warning. People shift positions slowly, careful not to disturb those beside them. There is nowhere else to go. As the heat increases, breathing becomes more difficult. No one speaks of danger, yet everyone feels it. The cellar no longer feels like shelter. It feels sealed. From above, footsteps still pass across the streets of Liverpool. Life continues on the surface. Below ground, endurance replaces hope. Survival becomes moment to moment. The air itself begins to feel hostile. Not violent, but unforgiving. What was once discomfort becomes threat. What was once crowded becomes oppressive. By mid-1847, the cellars are no longer merely overcrowded. They are becoming dangerous. And still, more people are sent below. Pressure builds in silence, setting the stage for what follows next. As the effects of overcrowding deepen, illness begins to spread through Liverpool. Not suddenly, but steadily. What started beneath the streets now reaches the surface. The city can no longer ignore what is happening below. Hospitals near the docks begin to fill. At first, slowly. Then all at once. Adult men and women arrive exhausted, weakened by hunger, damp air, and confinement. Many can no longer stand for long. Hospital corridors grow crowded as more are brought inside. Walls meant for passage become places of rest. Patients sit or lie wherever space allows. Benches, floors, and narrow corners are quickly occupied. Medical workers move carefully through the corridors. Their pace is measured, not hurried. Rooms designed for a few are forced to hold many. Beds are placed close together, leaving little space between them. The air inside the hospital feels heavy, much like the cellars below. Windows offer little relief. Supplies begin to thin. Clean linens are reused. Space becomes more valuable than comfort. Adult men and women wait quietly, leaning against walls, conserving strength. Few speak. Most simply endure. Doors open and close with little ceremony. Each movement becomes routine. Records are kept carefully. Names, dates, and notes are written by candlelight. Ledgers grow thicker as days pass. Each page marks another presence within the system. Those who cannot be admitted wait outside. They sit along the walls or stand in silence. The hospital becomes a place of sorting rather than healing. Space decides who is seen. Illness does not spread evenly. It follows overcrowding. Corridors become quieter as exhaustion deepens. Movement slows. Faces turn toward walls. Eyes remain half closed. There is no panic here. Only strain. Medical workers continue their tasks without pause. They step carefully between rooms, adjusting to constant demand. The hospital stretches beyond its limits. Every available space is used. From outside, Liverpool still appears orderly. Trade continues. Streets remain active. But inside these buildings, the cost of neglect becomes visible. The hospital is no longer a place of recovery alone. It becomes part of the same system that filled the cellars. A system absorbing people faster than it can restore them. What began underground now spreads through the city itself. Not with noise, but with quiet persistence. By late summer of 1847, illness is no longer an exception. It is part of daily life. And as the wards continue to fill, Liverpool moves closer to a breaking point it can no longer delay. As illness tightens its grip on Liverpool, death becomes an everyday presence. Not sudden, not dramatic, but constant. Carts begin to move through the streets from early morning until nightfall. Their pace is slow and deliberate. They do not draw attention. They do not stop traffic. They simply pass through streets that have already learned to look away. Adult men and women are carried out quietly, wrapped and covered without ceremony. There are no crowds. No announcements. The city adapts with disturbing speed. Burial grounds begin to fill faster than graves can be prepared. Earth is turned again and again, leaving little time for rest. Workers move methodically, repeating the same motions hour after hour. Efficiency replaces reflection. Space becomes the only concern. Individual markers grow rare. Coffins are reused where possible. When they are not, bodies are lowered directly into the ground. Records struggle to keep pace. Names are shortened. Details are missed. Many are buried without proper identification. Some without any record at all. For those left behind, there is no time to mourn. Survival demands attention. The carts continue to roll. Streets that once echoed with trade now grow accustomed to this quiet procession. It becomes part of the city's rhythm. Liverpool does not stop functioning. Commerce continues. Ships still dock. The machinery of the city moves forward, even as lives are quietly removed from it. The poor disappear first. Those without family vanish fastest. Entire lives are reduced to brief entries. Or erased completely. Burial grounds expand outward, consuming fields and open spaces. Rows blur together. Graves are dug deeper, closer, and with increasing speed. There is no space left for ceremony. Death loses its shock. It becomes administrative. The city does not speak of tragedy. It speaks of capacity. Officials measure numbers rather than names. Totals replace stories. The scale becomes difficult to comprehend. Yet it is accepted. Liverpool cleanses itself without violence. Without noise. By allowing the process to continue uninterrupted. The dead are removed efficiently. So the living can continue as before. By autumn of 1847, the presence of death no longer disrupts daily life. It has been absorbed. Carts still move through the streets. Graves continue to fill. And the city, outwardly unchanged, carries on. What remains behind is not only loss, but absence. An absence that settles into the ground beneath Liverpool. Layer by layer. And as the burial grounds continue to expand, the cost of silence becomes impossible to ignore. By the end of 1847, the truth is no longer hidden. It is written clearly in reports, ledgers, and medical records. Officials know exactly what has happened. They know where people were sent. They know why so many did not return. The conditions beneath the city are described in careful detail. The lack of air. The dampness. The overcrowding. The cause is understood. Overcrowding and neglect. And yet, for months, little is done. The explanations are familiar. The cost is too high. The budget is limited. Change must wait. Responsibility is shifted quietly. Blame is placed on those who suffered most. Illness is described as a failure of character rather than environment. Poverty is treated as a choice. The black hole remains. Not because it cannot be removed, but because it is convenient. It keeps suffering out of sight. It absorbs labor when needed, and death when it becomes unavoidable. Those living above ground are spared the smell, the dampness, and the reality beneath their feet. Only after tens of thousands are lost does pressure finally reach those in power. Reforms begin slowly. Cellar dwellings are declared unfit for human habitation. Sanitation systems are planned and constructed. Clean water becomes part of city design, rather than a privilege. Liverpool does not collapse. It adapts. But the change comes at a terrible cost. The city is rebuilt on foundations laid above mass graves. Streets grow cleaner over ground that once held silent suffering. Future generations walk these streets unaware of what lies beneath them. The black hole disappears from view, but not from history. What remains is a lesson written without monuments. Prosperity built without responsibility always demands payment. The men and women who vanished into the cellars left no markers behind. No names carved in stone. No public remembrance. They are remembered only in records. And in the ground itself. Liverpool moves forward, changed by what it allowed to happen. And the question that remains is not only historical. It is moral. How many lives must be lost before silence becomes unacceptable? And in times of comfort, how easily do we choose not to look below the surface?